Hello everybody, welcome back to Blast Away the Game Review. I'm your host, Dustin Murphy. I hope all of you have been having a great weekend so far. I know Saturday just kicked off. I know for some of you, today is your Sunday, and unfortunately, that's not always the funnest thing in the world, but we're here to help lighten up your weekend just a little bit, as we're going to be talking about Metal Gear Survive. Now, for those of you wondering, we're not going to be slamming on Metal Gear Survive because of the Hideo Kojima Konami breakup. We're not even going to be bringing that into light, really. But what we are going to do is we are going to be drawing parallels between Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, with its downloadable content, Metal Gear Online, and the Metal Gear Survive beta itself. So you will be seeing minor comparisons from point A to point B in order to better explain what changes have been made to the Metal Gear franchise and to be able to discuss if this works out in any way possible or if this is the worst case scenario and could be the very last installment of the Metal Gear franchise, even though this has nothing to do with the core series itself, since it is actually a survival horde mode slash base building title. Now, some of you are going to wonder, is this going to work? Is this going to make or break Metal Gear? Or has Konami found their golden era once more? Now, to begin, we do have to talk about what Metal Gear Survive is. As you can see here, it is primarily a resource management title, meaning you are going to be farming resources during the course of every single mission. You will spend the first 5 minutes doing just that. You'll be setting up your base, setting up defenses, but mostly you will be scrounging for extremely valuable resources across the map and undertaking side quests so that you can get even rarer resources and or items to use to the benefit of your team. The other issue here is it's not like any other Metal Gear we've ever seen. In a lot of ways, it just doesn't work in favor of the series. And it is alarming since it seems like Konami has lost touch with what makes Metal Gear Metal Gear. You know, even the environments are harsh to look at. They're not enjoyable. They're not eye candy. They're not something you're going to go tell somebody that you know that you game with, that you enjoy. You know, take Metal Gear Online in comparison. It's very vibrant. Everything's very lush, very colorful. It all stands out, and it works very well, and it has a lot to offer. You know, everything feels as if it has purpose, and it has a great ebb and flow to it. Whereas Metal Gear Survives just doesn't. It's very drab. It's very hazy. It's very... I don't even know what to call it. If Silent Hill had crossed over to Metal Gear, that's actually what I would call it. I would call it a hybrid between Metal Gear and Silent Hill, and it does not work in the benefit of the game. And unfortunately, I do hope they reevaluate this design choice, especially for people that do have color blindness, because it's going to make things extremely hard for them. Another issue is menus. We are going to be taking a look at Metal Gear Online's menus first. This is the customization menu for those of you that have not played Metal Gear Online. As you can see here, they're very minimalist, they're very clean, they are direct, they show you exactly what you're looking for, which is you can change out your clothing items, whether it's your headpiece, your armor, your suit. It's just all is very minimalist and it works in favor of the game. And unfortunately, this is a problem with Metal Gear Online versus Metal Gear Survive. Metal Gear Online winning this one out for sure. But even weapon loadouts are very minimalist and they work out very well in favor of Metal Gear Online. And again, in Metal Gear Survive, that's not the case at all. It's so overwhelming and it's not going to allow new players to really feel as if they've made the right choice, and they may actually second guess their choice in playing this game. You see, Metal Gear Survive doesn't have this kind of approach where you have your primary, secondary grenades, your equipment, and then your perks. Instead, Metal Gear Survive is extremely, extremely overwhelming. You have repair menus. You have 5 different workstations to go to where you can repair weapons, equip weapons, craft ammo, craft traps, craft defenses. I mean, it is so overwhelming, and this is coming from somebody who has been playing Metal Gear since Metal Gear came out on Famicom. So I've had a lot of time with the Metal Gear franchise, and for me to say Famicom, we're talking about the American SNES, the original launch day SNESs with Metal Gear. And unfortunately, I don't know what Konami was thinking here. I really don't. It really feels that they second guessed themselves in areas and just decided to push it through because they were crunched for time. They had to get this out the door. If that's the case, Konami, delay the game, take your time to work on it, clean up the menus, make them a lot more user friendly, because I can tell you right now, they're anything but user friendly. And the same goes for the class system. The class system is quite enjoyable in a lot of ways. In another way, it's really not, and it makes you wonder what the design choice was here too. You have to worry about your strength, you have to worry about vitality, dexterity, endurance, and literally none of them benefit your weapons outside of melee. So you're not going to see your bows get enhanced, you're not going to see your pistols and shotguns do more damage or grow more sturdy as you put points in. It's all focusing on the melee, and it really makes you wonder what was going on with this design choice here. Nothing feels as if it actually has purpose at this point. Sure, I do like the idea of leveling up stats. Sure, I do like the idea of leveling up my class because I did it with Metal Gear Survive. Just in this beta, I did it with Metal Gear Online. I've done it with multiple RPGs. I did it with Assassin's Creed Origins, Final Fantasy 15, It still just makes you wonder, why didn't this game take notes from those other titles and just have a little bit of life to it? Even the wait lobby has no soul. It's just this real drab, white, load screen type area, and it's not enjoyable to look at. It's not even pleasant to look at. But combat is another thing. Fortunately here, combat is actually really fun. It's very frantic. It is very fast-paced. You don't really have time to think. You literally just have to fight once the waves start. And you even have to decide, are you going to commit side missions while trying to defend your base? Because those missions can cause you to fail. Especially if your team is not doing great. But if that is not the case, they are highly advised to do. But there is another underlying issue outside of multiple design issues that this game just has all around, which is enemy intelligence. Let me be very blunt here, folks. The enemies are not smart. They're not like the ones from Metal Gear Solid 5, the Phantom Pain. They're not like the ones from 4. They're dumb. They're quite literally as dumb as they come. I'm not seeing enemies just try to go around traps, because they could quite have easily gone around that trap and, unfortunately for me, rushed me. But they didn't. Nothing feels like it has purpose. Everything just feels rushed. Nothing feels purposely done at this point. And that goes even for harder missions, or even when your team speeds up the drilling. Nothing feels well thought out or planned, because I can put these two barricades up here just as I did, and enemies are going to go attack the barricade before they're going to go for that wall and just jump over the knee-high wall. And unfortunately, it's not something that I approve of, and I really hope is looked at again before the game's launch in a month. Because if this stays here, this game's going to get really boring, and it's going to get boring extremely quick. Because the game's AI is not smart, it does not offer a high challenge, and it can easily be overdone by just simply setting down a bunch of traps, a few turrets, and just walking away. Which I've done more than once in a lobby, and unfortunately, I've come out with the highest points just setting down traps and just watching zombies rush one by one. So Konami, please reconsider the AI, take your time, redo the AI itself, and give us a challenge that we deserve. Especially if you're going to make a Metal Gear spin-off without Hideo Kojima. And I'm not saying that Hideo is the one that implemented the AI, but he is the one who knew shortcomings when he saw them, and this is definitely a shortcoming he would not have approved of. And so it is something that needs to be reconsidered. Luckily, for those of you wondering, is this a Hideo problem, or if it's a Konami problem, which one would it be? I really think this was just a problem in general, and it's something that was very heavily overlooked. But what is nice is traps all feel unique, and they are actually really fun to play with. Whether it's blade traps, flame traps, electric traps, ice traps, oil traps, they're all a blast to play with, and all of them do feel like they pack their own punch. And that's not to say that some are going to be weaker than others, because some are weaker than others. And there are enemies that will definitely show you that, especially like enemies such as the bomber, who can just eat through environments. He's actually one of the few enemies that I'm actually scared to take on in the game, because he can eat through environments, he can eat through your defenses, he can eat through everything, and he does bring a very hefty challenge that you have to pay attention to, because he can very quickly eat through your defenses and leave your team completely vulnerable. So I do hope that when they do implement more AI that, or enemy types, that they do implement ones that are a huge risk to, say, your defenses, like my fences or my traps. I do hope there are enemies that will put those at risk versus ones that won't, because if right now I can just eat through missions just with a few turrets and a few traps, and that is definitely a problem. So definitely some stuff to consider, but does that make this game an overall a bad title? No, it really doesn't. It just brings down some very serious questions about design choices. Again, and I am going to stress design choices, especially since this game takes everything we know and we love about Metal Gear and just kind of throws it all out the window. So definitely something for Konami to consider in the long run. Now, one design choice I can say that I do appreciate is resources are seemingly shared between you and your team. So if you're going to build traps on the go, just remember your team does share those resources. And if your team does need weapons or ammo, you can craft that for them, especially if they are short of their own resources. If they are and they cannot undertake side missions, definitely consider going and completing side missions on your own volition. Now, side quests do come in different forms, depending on the progression of the mission. Some will simply be go grab a resource, while others will be things such as grabbing Metal Gear walkers. These walkers are extremely, I cannot stress how important they are towards the end of the missions, because they are vital key elements to completing some of these missions, especially the higher level missions where you're going to be seeing a lot of armored infected as well as bombers. But the one thing the third wave does have others don't is they do have a lot more enemies that are going to approach the base. And so it seems that Konami has decided to up the difficulty per wave and definitely make teams work harder together. Now, one thing you do need to know about the Metal Gear Walker, which I had to learn about these Gear Walkers, or whatever you would prefer to call them, is they don't have an ammo count. The only way to know if you're running low on ammo is the barrel will start overheating and the walker itself will start taking damage over time. The other thing you do need to know, even though it says you've completed the side quest, is in order to truly complete it, you do need to bring both of them back to base, and there will be more side objectives that pop up over the course of a wave that is already in progress. So definitely consider, if your team is doing a great job holding off waves, consider having somebody go off and do their own thing. Now, is this a design flaw of any sort like I've been ragging on? Actually, no. It adds to the game's entire intensity, and that's something I really hope Konami does a lot more with in the final version. Whereas this is only the beta, and we're only getting to experience 3 missions plus ever-changing daily missions that do change out what items you can get, such as blueprints and resources, and what your key to success is. Fortunately for me, I've had a lot of teams be able to succeed, especially just because we locked down the base. We decided to line the enemy paths with defenses so that the enemies themselves were deterred a little more than they would be in the course game. But again, that does bring up the fact of design flaws. I do hope this is something they don't overlook in the final version, because if it is, it's going to make this game extremely boring, especially once your teams figure out all the routes and how the enemies are going to attack. Even here, as you can see, yeah, enemies did break through one of our bottom defenses, but again, the AI is not smart. And that is extremely problematic, especially since I was able to put up just a few fences just to cut off a few seconds to try and get turrets or some sort of defense down and try to protect the mine itself. And again, they're just not smart. They don't offer a challenge. Even the armored themselves, sure, they take more damage. They are a lot sturdier than the others, but the challenge just isn't there. Even the wounding system doesn't make sense, because you do get wounded. You do have to do your own first aid on yourself. You do have to manage your thirst and your hunger. It's just all design choices that don't make sense. And while I understand it adds to the game's intensity, it just feels like it doesn't serve enough purpose to really be placed within the game. Now, were this harder missions, say a hard difficulty or extreme difficulty or survival difficulty, that could have changed the status quo. But at this time, it doesn't change the status quo at all, and it actually hinders the enjoyability of this game altogether. So it just brings down that entire thing I was saying about poor design choices. Do these choices mean that Konami has a bad game on their hands? Probably not. There are going to be people who absolutely love the game. Me personally, I do have more annoyances than I do have of moments that I can say I enjoyed the title. And again, it still brings forth that question of, why didn't they ask the community for feedback? Why didn't they look at other games of the genre and decide what they did wrong and where they can improve that and use it to improve their own title? Because if that's the case, they didn't do, they could be hurting their game in the long run. And unfortunately for me, whether I'm a Metal Gear Solid fan or not, which I am, I still can't but help look at the flaws and say, Konami, what have you done? Why didn't you Q&A this a little harder? Why didn't you listen to feedback if there was some? Because overall, this game just has so many fundamental flaws that I actually want to appreciate it in that element. But as a gamer, I can't go in and just say, hey, this is going to be a great game, go buy it at full price, because honestly I can't. I can't at this very moment suggest the title itself just based on a lot of these design flaws. And a lot of it just comes down from simple things like this. Why didn't the enemies just go around that blockade? Why didn't they just go off the path and evade my defenses, whereas something more like this right here would have actually stopped them and funneled them into a bunch of traps? It's just these small little things that don't make sense. And while I understand the mindless zombie approach, it just doesn't work in this game's favor, and Konami's got a lot to reconsider before February 20th. But even then, even with these improvements, it just makes you wonder, is it going to be a post-launch improvement, or are they going to go ahead and improve it in studio during crunch? And if they do decide to improve it during crunch, just take your time, keep the beta out, patch the beta, and see what fan feedback has to offer. Because as far as I'm concerned right now, this game has a lot more flaws than the non-flaws. And unfortunately, when one thing outweighs the other, it's probably a problem that needs looked at before it becomes a serious problem post-launch. While I can say I have enjoyed the chaos that is defending a base, I can also say that I've grown extremely annoyed multiple times because, one, resources are almost too limited at times, and then there's times when resources are too available. Now, is this going to be something that plays way different in the later game when we do get the single player element? It probably could, but just from what they're letting us experience right now, I'm not holding my breath. I'm not going to say yes, I'm not going to say no, because as far as I'm concerned, from what they're letting us see, this is the core game, and this is what we have to look forward to when the game launches a month from now. So right now, my honest opinion about this game is it's extremely flawed. The AI is just dumber than rocks. I mean, I really don't know how else to put it. And while, again, I said I appreciate it once already, I can't appreciate an AI that is that dumb and does not offer that big of a challenge. I would have loved to have seen enemies that would climb terrain. I would have loved to have seen enemies that tried to dodge explosives or even moved off the beaten path in order to attack the base while still having some indication of where they're coming from and where they would go. And unfortunately on the map, it shows you exactly where they're going, how they're going to do it, and when they're going to do it. And that's just something I can't appreciate, and I can't say was a good design choice all around. Now, as far as graphics, animation, and sound are, this game actually is pretty good to look at. I mean, it's actually graphically appealing. It's right on par with Metal Gear Online and Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. So that does lean in the favor of Konami. And the most admirable part is the fact they did take areas from Metal Gear Solid 5 and use them for this game's core experience. Like this spot right here, some of you may and may not recognize it, is actually the first village you visit in Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, and this is actually the same building. So it is kind of admirable to see that Konami at least did give a nod towards Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain and that element. But they even gave a really generous nod to Metal Gear Online, because in Metal Gear Online, they did the same thing. Once you completed a mission, you earned rewards. The rewards in Metal Gear Online was more XP, performance ratings and the such. In this one, it's resources and experience. So it definitely does pay off in a lot of ways. And it is something I can say I openly do appreciate. Just like I said, this base, it was from Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. And they did a great job at making it look a little more damaged, a little more ruined. But unfortunately, again, the shadowing and lighting is kind of off, and it doesn't really play favor towards Metal Gear Survive. And I really do hope, in a lot of ways, this game does shine a lot more when the finished version comes out. If not, we aren't going to have a lot to look forward to, and unfortunately, we are going to play a very unpolished game, and that's just not something I can appreciate. But until then, I am going to cross my fingers. I am going to hope that Konami does take notes of these shortcomings and decides to look at them and reapproach them in order to offer a truly polished and memorable experience, especially if they want to outdo, say, Metal Gear Online or Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, even though that doesn't seem what they're going to be doing here, and they just want to offer a really solid co-op experience. But until then, what do you all think? Have you been enjoying the beta? Is it something that you are going to be picking up when it launches? Let us know in the comments. Let us know what your thoughts and your opinions are regarding Metal Gear Survive, especially since it does offer solid performance. It does have beautiful graphics for what they're trying to do with it, and it does have really great audio design across the board. It is a very well crafted game in the sense of performance, graphics, and audio. Just some of the design options are they're questionable, to say the least. But if this is the approach Metal Gear is going to be taking, it's going to be doing a lot more spin-offs, that I just really hope that those spin-offs get a lot more attention to detail than this one did. And I just hope Konami offers us a way to have beautiful and lush environments that we saw with Metal Gear Online. But I'm going to stop it there. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I do hope this discussion / hands-on impressions gave you something think about before purchasing Metal Gear if you haven't had a chance to play Metal Gear Survive during its beta period. Again, I'm your host here at Blast Away the Game Review, Dustin Murphy. I want to thank all of you for tuning in, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.